think this may be as many of us as there's going to be, so let's get started. Good afternoon. The Secretary General spoke this morning to mark the 80th anniversary of the first meeting of the Economic and Social Council, or Ecosoc. He said that for 8 full decades, Ecosoc has been an engine of progress. And yet he noted that despite signs of real progress, our world is in a precarious state. He said that today's intertwined crises demand urgent, collective responses, and Ecosoc can help lead the way. Mr. Guterres urged member states to take immediate steps to implement the reforms they committed to in the Pact for the Future, including steps to strengthen Ecosoc's work as a principal organ for coordination, policy review, policy dialogue, and decisions on economic and social development. The Secretary General said that Ecosoc has a vital role to play in our divided and unequal world, and we must waste no time in strengthening it. Today, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, was in Paris to take part in a UNESCO event to mark the International Day of Education. In her remarks, she underscored the role of young people as co-creators in shaping education. She also highlighted education as one of the most powerful tools to change the world and emphasized its importance for sustainable development, inclusion, and peace. Ms. Mohammed also stressed the need to prepare young people for a rapidly changing digital future while addressing both the opportunities and risks of new technologies, and reaffirmed the importance of safe, inclusive learning environments, particularly in contexts of conflict and crisis. The Deputy Secretary General met with the newly appointed Director General of the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, Khaled El-Anani. They discussed strengthened collaboration between the United Nations and UNESCO, as well as priority actions for the post-2030 education agenda with youth at the center. She also met with the chair of the UNESCO Executive Board and a group of member states. Discussions focused on UNESCO priorities and the UN 80 process, including the role of UNESCO within broader United Nations system-wide reform efforts. She is expected to return to New York this weekend. And as I just pointed out, tomorrow is the International Day of Education. In his message, the Secretary General stresses that education is a human right and a foundation for opportunity, dignity, and peace. Yet 272 million children and young people worldwide remain out of school due to poverty, conflict, displacement, discrimination, and disasters. He calls on governments, partners, and donors to make education a priority in policies, budgets, and recovery efforts. This morning, the Security Council held a briefing on Colombia. Miroslav Yencha, the special representative of the Secretary General for Colombia and head of the UN verification mission in the country, said that over the past 3 months, he has met with key counterparts on the implementation of the peace agreements at the national level and around Colombia. Mr. Yencha noted that although violence is far lower today than at the height of the armed conflict, the presence of armed groups in areas still affected by conflict continues to inflict suffering on entire communities. He said that the consequences for the civilian population are grave, as detailed again in the latest report of the Secretary General. Threats and killings of social leaders, forced displacement and confinement, and an alarming increase in the recruitment and use of children by armed groups. He added that border areas are particularly complex. Mr. Yencha echoed the Secretary General's call for all involved to intensify their efforts towards the full implementation of the 2016 peace agreement. He highlighted that at a time of tensions, both globally and regionally, it is in everyone's interest to secure lasting peace and security in Colombia. Turning to the Gaza Strip, our colleagues in the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that hundreds of thousands of people are staying in displacement sites and exposed to cold and rainy winter conditions. Our partners dealing with site management assess that hundreds of households have had their tents damaged by the strong winds this week. And partners are coordinating emergency repairs while stressing that more sustainable solutions are required. UNICEF reported yesterday that about 5,000 recreational kits with toys and stationary items had entered Gaza since last Thursday, for the first time since 2023. These supplies will help more than 375,000 children, including 1,000 girls and boys with disabilities. For over 2 years, many children have been trying to learn without basic supplies. No notebooks, no pencils, no erasers, no crayons. We continue to call for the further lifting of restrictions on items that the UN and our partners are allowed to bring into Gaza. Turning to the West Bank, you may recall that on Monday, an estimated 25,000 Palestinians were placed under curfew in parts of the Israeli-controlled area in Hebron City, disrupting their access to food, healthcare, and in-person education. Today, OCHA reports that the Israeli forces' operation in Hebron has ended. The UN and our partners have stayed in touch with affected families throughout the operation, and we will now conduct assessments to identify any assistance required. In southern Lebanon, peacekeepers of the UN interim force in Lebanon continue to discover unauthorized weapons caches and unexploded ordnance. Yesterday, UNIFIL patrols discovered 2 separate unauthorized weapons and ammunition caches, including 19 mortar shells, a launch tube, and hand grenades in Sector West, and 4 mortar shells and ammunition boxes in Sector East. As per standard practice, the items were referred to the Lebanese army for disposal. Peacekeepers also continue to report daily Israeli Defense Forces ground and air activities in the area of operations. We reiterate that both parties must fully respect the blue line and take steps towards the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701. And as part of our efforts to support stability along the blue line, UNIFIL peacekeepers have been refurbishing blue line markers damaged during the 2023-2024 conflict. Since October 2025, 11 such markers have been restored. Work is underway to refurbish 4 additional markers next week. And UNIFIL this week launched an explosive ordnance risk education campaign in support of potentially vulnerable groups, including children and displaced people. Working in coordination with the UN Mine Action Service, the Lebanese Mine Action Center, and non-governmental organizations, UNIFIL peacekeepers will raise awareness among hundreds of children, young people, and internally displaced people across 17 southern Lebanese towns and villages. About 100 children participated at the campaign's kickoff session earlier this week in Bint Jbeil, which also included a simulated disposal exercise conducted by UNIFIL Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team. I have an update for you on the situation in Al-Hol camp in Syria. Today, the UN Refugee Agency was able to access Al-Hol camp together with Syrian government officials. UNHCR was also able to establish contact with some camp residents. Essential supplies have also resumed. Trucks carrying bread entered the camp today, facilitated by UNHCR, following a 3-day interruption caused by the volatile security situation inside the camp. In addition, water trucking services organized by UNICEF and facilitated by UNHCR were delivered yesterday, helping to partially restore access to basic services for the camp population. Yesterday, an interagency mission led by UNHCR, with participation from UNICEF, the UN Population Fund, the World Food Programme, OCHA, and non-governmental organizations, reached the government compound at the entrance of Al-Hol camp and accessed key facilities located outside the camp perimeter to support the resumption of water services. Entry into the camp was not possible due to the security situation. UN agencies and partners reaffirmed their commitment to supporting the government in delivering humanitarian assistance, while emphasizing the critical need to ensure security inside the camp. They also highlighted the importance of facilitating the movement of personnel and supplies between Al-Hasake and Kamishli. And yesterday, I was asked about the situation in the city of Kobani in Syria's Aleppo governorate. OCHA tells us that our partners operating there are concerned about the risk of the humanitarian situation getting worse there. All roads connecting to Kobani are currently closed. Interruptions to the power supply, water, and internet are hampering people's access to basic services. Our partners have started to report shortages of food and other key items. Health facilities are operating, but there have been reports of shortage of medicine. Our team is in discussion with authorities in Aleppo on how we can support them. Meanwhile, we and our partners continue to provide humanitarian aid following recent clashes in the governorates of Aleppo, Raqqa, Hasake, and Deir ez-Zor. The World Health Organization and its partners are providing medical supplies, mobile nutrition services, and care for injured children and pregnant women. We are also engaging with our partners and authorities to carry out more assessments and facilitate access. Turning to Afghanistan, our colleagues from the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that extreme winter weather across several regions has resulted in at least 16 deaths and dozens of injuries, most of them among children. Heavy rain and snowfall triggered a deadly rockslide in Nuristan province, while other areas have seen the weather collapse roofs and trigger traffic accidents. Our humanitarian colleagues note that Afghanistan remains one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world, with nearly 22 million people or more than out of every 5 people in need of assistance. This year's Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan calls for $1.7 billion to support 17.5 million people. Volker Turk, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, briefed the Human Rights Council today on Iran, telling them that thousands of people, including children, were killed during a security crackdown that intensified on the 8th of January, with the use of live ammunition by the security forces against demonstrators. He said that peaceful protesters were reportedly killed in the streets and in residential areas, including universities and medical facilities. Video evidence appears to show hundreds of bodies in morgues, with fatal injuries to the head and chest, he said. The High Commissioner called on the Iranian authorities to end their brutal repression, including summary trials and disproportionate sentences. He called for the immediate release of all those arbitrarily detained by the Iranian authorities and for a complete moratorium on the death penalty. He also urged the government to end the internet and communications shutdown and to stop using this as a systematic practice. In Mozambique today, we, along with our humanitarian partners, launched a $187 million appeal following the widespread flooding in the south and center of the country. This appeal, which is an addendum to the 2026 Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan, aims to support some 600,000 people through the end of June. The UN continues to scale up its support for the government-led response, despite access and funding constraints. A UN disaster assessment and coordination team has been deployed, with the first members arriving today. The team will work closely with authorities and our partners to work on coordination, analysis, and operations, and will be based in the provinces of Gaza and Maputo. On the logistics side, our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that our partners are working with the government on transportation plans, storage capacity, and the review of access routes, including maritime, river, and helicopter options. The World Food Programme is setting up a mobile warehouse in Shai, the capital of Gaza province. We are also continuing to distribute emergency aid, including tarpaulins and blankets. Our partners have set up 2 child-friendly spaces offering family tracing, reunification, and psychosocial support. Emergency health and nutrition supplies have been pre-positioned in Gaza and Maputo provinces to support more than 20,000 people for up to 3 months. Mobile nutrition centers have been deployed to carry out screening, treatment, and micronutrient supplementation. In addition, antibiotics, nutrition supplements, and other critical supplies to treat hundreds of children have been mobilized. Turning to Nigeria, we and our partners, together with the government of Nigeria, yesterday launched a $516 million humanitarian needs and response plan to help 2.5 million people in the northeastern states of Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe. Widespread displacement, limited basic services, climate shocks, economic hardship, and shrinking livelihood opportunities are driving humanitarian needs higher in that area. Women and children are particularly affected, making up 8 out of 10 people in immediate need. The World Food Programme is sounding the alarm that more than 1 million people in northeast Nigeria risk being cut off from emergency food and nutrition assistance within weeks unless urgent new funding is received. On Monday, our guest will be UNICEF's Deputy Executive Director Ted Chaiban and WFP's Deputy Executive Director Carl Scow. Ted will be here in person and Carl will join us virtually. They will brief you on their recent joint mission to Gaza and the West Bank. And last, we have a quiz for you today about the latest payment. This country's capital city is located 28 meters below sea level on the western coast of the Caspian Sea, making it the world's lowest lying capital city. Any guesses? You're right. It is. It's Azerbaijan. Edie got it. It's Baku in Azerbaijan. We thank our friends in Baku for their full payment to the regular budget. Azerbaijan's payment brings the total number of member states on the honor roll to 24. Edie.
Thank you, Farhan. I usually miss them all, so I'm...
Yeah.
First, is the UN's aim still to have the UN Refugee Agency take over the management of Al-Hol camp, as Edom Warsornu told the Security Council?
Yes, that's the plan. And as I was saying at the start of the briefing, the good news about that was that the UN Refugee Agency was able to access the Al Hol camp. They're in touch, and they will work with the government authorities in terms of trying to make sure that conditions of the camp are maintained, and that supplies can go to the camp.
You had made clear at the beginning that UNHCR will actually be installing themselves there and running the camp.
Yes, that's what the intention is, and UNHCR was able to get trucks that are carrying bread into the camp today. They were able to help to partially restore water access, and so some of the work that they're trying to do has begun.
And a second question on a completely different topic. Does the Secretary General have any comment on plans for the United States, Russia, and Ukraine to meet in Abu Dhabi, which I believe would be the first meeting of the three countries together?
Yes, we certainly encourage efforts to bring the Russian Federation and Ukraine together in an effort to resolve the armed conflict between them. And as you know, we support a resolution of the conflict in accordance with the UN Charter and the relevant resolutions of the Security Council and the General Assembly. Pam?
Just to follow up, sorry. Thank you, Farhan. Just to follow up first to Edie's question, would on the UAE meeting, is there any sense that any UN official would be there?
There's nothing to announce at this stage. If that changes, I'll let you know.
Okay, and on the buildup of international military assets in the Middle East and the war of words between Iran and the United States, are you worried, and does the Secretary General have anything to say about caution on a major military conflict between the two countries? Thank you.
Well, we certainly hope that all steps will be taken to avoid any escalation of the conflict in Iran. The Secretary General has repeatedly made clear that the region cannot afford any intensification of the situation there. And as you know, the Secretary General has always believed that any resolution of the situation in Iran, including of its nuclear program, needs to be dealt with through negotiations.
Thank you. One quick one, and a final one is WHO. Can you say what the impact will be of the U.S. pulling out today?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm glad you asked that, because one thing I wanted to make clear is that the U.S. participation in the World Health Organization was accepted by the World Health Assembly with certain conditions set out by the U.S. for its eventual withdrawal from the World Health Organization. Those conditions include giving a 1-year notice and fully meeting the payment of financial obligations. The World Health Organization has not yet confirmed to the Secretary General as depositary that those conditions have been fulfilled. So any further questions need to be referred to WHO.
Thank you.
Yes, Yvonne and then Namo.
I'm sorry, I wasn't ready. Farhan, today or yesterday, UN experts expressed alarm over reports of forced labor of Uyghur, Tibetan, and other minorities in China. China says the allegations are fabricated. What does the UN Secretary General say?
We believe that all of the work done by different rapporteurs and different human rights boards needs to be followed up with, and we trust that the authorities will follow up.
Okay, sorry, but does the Secretary General support the work of the special rapporteurs and the UN experts in this case?
Well, as you know, special rapporteurs are independent, but we believe that all of their work needs to be taken seriously by all the member states, including those whom they report to.
Okay, and one other question. Has the Secretary General noticed the similarity between the UN emblem and that of the new newly created Board of Peace? And if so, what is his view about the similarity?
I believe that Stefan commented on this yesterday. These are separate bodies with separate logos. If there was any problem, we would deal with it. Yes, Namu.
I was watching your press conference on the way, so you said all roads to Kobani have been cut off. Have you reached to Syrian government officials to ask why they have imposed this siege on Kobani, a predominantly Kurdish city? What is the reason?
Well, we are engaging with the authorities. We want to carry out more assessments, and we want to make sure that access to Kobani is facilitated. So we're going to continue with that work.
Is this what they are doing to Kobani consistent with their obligations under international law?
It's what we want to make sure is that we have access to all those who are in humanitarian need, including in Kobani, and we'll continue to work on that.
Sorry, just one last. Have you reached, what do your people tell you about the situation for civilians in Kobani? Because the media reports I am seeing is that people don't have clean water, drinkable water, and electricity for more than a week.
Well, part of what we need is sufficient access to conduct assessments, and that's what we're trying to get. Deji?
Since Pam asked about WHO, there's another major step that soon will happen, which is the Paris Accord. January 27 would be the last day that the withdrawal of the US will take effect. What does the Secretary General have to say on the second withdrawal of the US from Paris Accord?
Oh, of course, it's important for us that all countries abide by their obligations to deal with climate change. It's a critical problem, and what is needed is collective action. So we want to discourage any efforts to retreat from those commitments.
Do you know any other formal inquiry letters from the US to withdraw from what the 66 UN entities? Do you have an updated information on that? How many agencies have received the official request?
No, I have no new notifications of withdrawal to announce.
Okay, one last question. This might be the last question of me due to some visa extension procrastination here. So this really might be the last question for the very short near future. Hopefully they would sort this out. First, I feel very honored and it's a pleasure to work with everybody and ask you impossible questions. So this question would be easier to answer. That is, for the UN, what is the importance for correspondents to cover things happening in this building and ask all those impossible questions?
Well, the importance of it is that you have the critical role of making sure that the peoples of the world know what's happening and know what our role is in dealing with this. So we've always appreciated all the questions, no matter how tendentious they may be. And I certainly hope that once the snows have come and gone over this weekend, next week we will still see you here in this room. Yes.
I would just like to echo what you said and tell Deji that he's been a very important part of the UN Press Corps for all of his years here, and we have all greatly appreciated his questions and his friendship.
Indeed. And let's see what next week brings. I really do look forward to seeing you in that chair, or maybe the one next to it. Have a great weekend, everyone.